Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa Ahl Baytihi at-Tayyibin at-Tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we can have a louder and more energetic salawat for the love of Sayyidah Zainab. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And an even louder salawat in honor of Imam al-Hujjah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When it comes to this discussion that we began yesterday, one of the things that we began it with is that when we are seeking spirituality, we are seeking closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oftentimes what we do is we go after the foundational elements of our faith. We go after things like the prayers, we go after things like fast, we go after things like Hajj. We go after all of these things, but sometimes we miss something that is just as important as these elements. And what we began that discussion on yesterday was this idea of showing ihsan, showing goodness to the parents. And we went over just how important it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to us, if you want to be close to me, if you want that tranquility that comes with being next to me, that peace that you feel from that connection, then alongside all of these acts of ibadah, I also need you to do this one thing, and it's very important. It is in fact so important, it is in fact so vital that Allah, He connects it, the idea of showing goodness to our parents, He connects it to the idea of worshiping Allah Himself. And it's very strange because from our human perspective, when we are thinking about the worship of Allah, and we are thinking about being good to our parents, it doesn't seem as if these two things are connected. It doesn't seem as if they are even in the same universe. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I have created this world. And if you want to become close to me, if you want to reach proximity to me, then you have to do exactly the instruction manual that I have given to you. And then He tells us even further through the Ahlul Bayt that there are secrets that are hidden in this issue of ihsan towards parents. What does He say? In one of the traditions that we went over last night, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, recite a salawat please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says the following, he says, lucky is the one that shows goodness to his parents. Why? Allah, He says, because, or Rasulullah rather says that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to extend his lifespan. Now, you can pursue this question all you want. How does this work? How is it that someone, Allah has written for them that you are going to live for 60 years on this earth? He is good to his parents. She is good to her parents. Allah says you get to live for 80 years. And vice versa. Someone is horrible to their parents, breaks their heart over and over again, disrespects them. Allah says, I had written for you 60, but now you are only going to live, for example, 40 years. It was that system that I was speaking about yesterday, that alongside that world of physical cause and effect that Allah has created, that He says if you want to achieve success, these are the physical steps that you have to take. There is another system that He has created, which is the metaphysical system that we cannot see, we cannot perceive it. But Allah, He says that if you apply the principles of this metaphysical system, you are going to see wonders. One of those wonders is the thing that all of us are after, that's extended lifespan. In another tradition, Imam Hadi alayhi salam, he says that if you act in an ill manner, meaning that you become one of those children that is known as agh, you break the heart of your parents, you torment them, you become a living hell for them. Imam Hadi alayhi salam, he says, it brings about poverty and disgrace. Again, we can ask this question all that we want for centuries. How in the world is this issue connected to that issue? How is it that if I am rude to my parents, my economic well-being takes a hit? If Allah had determined this year you are going to make this much, suddenly that amount is reduced, but not just in economic terms. The hadith even says that in social terms. Sometimes, this issue of disgrace, social rejection, we wonder, why is it everyone hates me? I didn't do anything. And of course, sometimes it's just the way it is. But other times, if we look, we can find a connection, because these ahadith are connecting the issues. We can see that maybe because of the heartbreak that we brought towards our parents, Allah, He lowers our status in the eyes of the people. And we don't know how it works. We don't know how they see us less than. But this is the system that Allah has created, and this is Him teaching us about this system. Now, one of the things that I wanted to introduce tonight, and I have to mention this, because it's going to come up, and I'm sure many of you have wondered about this question already, that what if you have parents that are very abusive? Because sometimes it happens. Sometimes you have a mother, you have a father, there are mental issues, there are extreme behavioral issues, there might be even drug issues that causes them to torment you. They are behaving in a way in which they are ruining your life. Literally, you are not able to bear it. Is the issue of ihsan, does it still apply? Do you still have to be in touch with them? Do you still have to help them? My brothers and sisters, our religion is a rational religion. If there is ever a situation that is bringing you harm, and it's not just a little bit of a kerfuffle that you are having a dispute. Sometimes parents and us, we get into a difference of opinion. They aggravate us, we aggravate them. It's beyond that. It's a real issue. Everyone agrees. This is not normal. If you truly feel, you truly know that this is something that you cannot bear, it is destroying your mental, your emotional well-being, Islam doesn't say you have to continue maintaining that contact. We have to be very clear here. But these are going to be for sure extreme cases. Because the vast majority of parents, of course, they are going to have faults, just as you are going to have faults when you have children, right? A lot of times we think that we are perfection itself, but when we look at our parents, we see, oh, they have this defect and this issue and that issue, and I wish they wouldn't do that. And then when we have kids, we realize that they look at us in exactly the same way. If it's like this, then you have to show that ihsan. Now, during the time of the Ahlul Bayt, a man who was a Christian man, he actually approached one of the Imams. I believe it was Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He approaches the Imam, and this Christian man from a Christian background, Christian tribe, all the way through, he becomes interested in this religion of Islam. He hears this religion is rising and it's become very popular. And he says, let me go and see what this religion is all about. He makes his way, he finds Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And he sits down with him. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, I have a number of questions about this religion of yours. I'm a Christian man. We have a different belief system. I'm interested to know what your beliefs are. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he sits with this Christian man. He speaks to him about the religion of Islam. He begins to go over many of the principles, and by the end of this several-day discussion, the Christian man, he decides that he wants to become a Muslim. He's really blown away at the beauty of this religion. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, how is it that I can become a Muslim? I want to accept this religion, this faith. The Imam, he says to him, we say the Shahada, and he takes him through that process of the Shahada. And that man, he ends up becoming a Muslim. And he ends up spending several more days with the Imam. He wants to learn at least the foundations of Islam. One of the questions that this Christian man asks, he says, Yabna Rasulillah, one of the problems that I'm going to have, I can think of right now, is that when I go back to my home city, I have a mother that is a Christian, of course. When I tell her that I have become a Muslim, she's not going to be happy. Of course, you can imagine that someone comes to their parents and they say, by the way, Mom, Dad, I've changed religions. They're going to blow their top. They want the best for their children. They think that the best is their way, their religion. He says, I need advice from you. What should I do? Should I separate from my mother because I am now a Muslim? She is now a Christian. There is this division that has been created between us. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says no. And then he begins to teach this young man all of the principles in Islam of how one is to deal with their parents. The young man is blown away. He had no idea that Islam gives this much importance to this issue of parents. And the Imam gives him all of the ways that when you go back alongside the salah, alongside the fasting, alongside the worship of Allah, this is one of the duties that you have in the eyes of Allah. I want you to go above and beyond how a son is supposed to treat his mother. The young man, he makes his way back to his town, I'm sure, thinking a million thoughts. You know, sometimes when people convert to the religion of Islam, their parents kick them out. They force them to leave the house, they disown them, they do horrible things. This young man is going, he's making his way back to his town. Eventually he enters into his hometown, he enters into his home. He goes in and he has now the task of telling his mother that he is converted to this other religion. He goes in, he says, Mother, something happened to me on this journey. The mother says, what happened? He says, I met with the grandson of the Prophet of Islam, and we sat and we spoke, and this is a beautiful religion, Mother. After a few days, I converted to Islam. I'm now a Muslim. As you can imagine, the mother loses it. She yells at him, she screams at him, she says, you are going to hell, it's over. Whatever the mother says, no matter how much abuse she heaps upon this son, the son, he remembers the teachings of Imam Sadiq, he remains quiet. He remains quiet. He doesn't say anything negative back to his mother. Eventually the mother calms down. She doesn't have a choice. She has to take this conversion. Some time passes, and this young man, he's dedicating himself that alongside his salah and alongside his fasts and alongside the Quran, he is dedicating, how can I apply these teachings of Imam Sadiq? He goes above and beyond what was normal to him, and he is doing everything that he can to be one of those who has ihsan towards his parents. My brothers and sisters, a little bit of time passes. One day the mother comes to him and she says, my son, I want to ask you a question. The son says, what is it? She says, the man that you spoke to, was he a prophet of God? The son, he says, no, mother. It was the grandson, the great-grandson of the messenger of Islam. She says, my son, are you sure? He says, mother, I am sure. She says, because when I look in the books that we have, the divine books that we have been given, she says, the behavior that you showed me after your conversion to this religion, it is the behavior that I see the Anbiya, the prophets of God, they are telling us to do. She says, my son, the only source that could know these things, that could teach these things, it has to be a divine source. She says, my son, I want to become of your faith. I want to accept the religion of Islam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The mother becomes a Muslim. She learns how to pray that day. She does her Dhuhr and Asr. She does her Maghrib and Isha. And it's mentioned that she was very old at that point in time. That night, she ends up passing away, and she passes away while in a state of Islam. My brothers and sisters, oftentimes when we think about this idea of bringing people to our faith, it's really a big deal. You know, sometimes you see Muslims, they set up tables and they do da'wah. They're trying to bring people to Islam. We believe and we assume that people are attracted to Islam purely from the perspective of the rational aspects, the elements that we have within Islam that are maybe philosophical, the proofs of God, for example. Of course, these are important. But when we look at the seerah of Rasulullah, when we look at the lives of the Ahlul Bayt, what we find is that one of the things that alongside these rational proofs brought people to Islam, it was the akhlaq, it was the behavior of those divine figures. We have to remember this. Because when we tell people about Islam, the first thing that they do, they look at our behavior. They say, you say that you have this beautiful religion, that your messenger had the most beautiful of akhlaq. But am I going to see that same beauty in your actions? Or no? It's only going to be from your mouth, from your lips, but the way that you behave is something else entirely. We have to keep this in mind, that for many people alongside the rational proofs, it was the akhlaq of the Muslims that really drew people in. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all that beautiful Islamic akhlaq, inshallah. This issue of parents, one of the important elements that now we have to go into, is that when Allah has ordered us to be so good to our parents, there is a reason for it. Usually in Islam, when you look at something which is supposed to be highly respected, very loved, there is a reason that usually that position has a very high responsibility. They have a very lofty weight on their shoulders. And when we look at this issue of the role that parents have and the relationship between parents and children, we have to recognize that it is a two-way street. If you remember yesterday, I mentioned that tradition that someone came to the Holy Prophet and they were asking about the rights of the parents. And the Holy Prophet, he turns to them and he says that your parents are your paradise and your hellfire. My brothers and sisters, the opposite is also true. That when Allah blesses us with children, He isn't just giving them and saying, this is yours. He is giving them to us as a very lofty amana, as a very great trust. And on the Day of Judgment, Allah is going to look and He's going to say, what did you do with this trust that I gave to you? Here I wanted to mention 2 points. That is the responsibility of the parents towards the children. And again, on the Day of Judgment, when we are standing before Allah, one of the things that may prevent our entry into paradise, it may be the way that we raised our children. The first element, and this is such an important element that the narrations have mentioned to us. They say that one of the primary responsibilities of the parent to the child is the education and the training of the children. Now, many times when you hear the word education, what do you think? You think of K through 12, right? You think of university. But during the time of the Ahlul Bayt, we didn't have Harvard. We didn't have the University of Michigan. We didn't have any of these. In fact, I don't even think there was any established schools, at least in the earlier years. So what was it that the Ahlul Bayt were talking about, where they're saying the primary duty, the primary responsibility of the parent towards the child is related to the education and the training of that child? It goes back to a very important element. And that is that the Ahlul Bayt were telling us that you are responsible to give your child an Islamic foundation. That when that child is growing up, when that child looks around them, they see this world of existence, they understand what their purpose is in life. They understand what their duty is in life. I can't tell you how many youth are running around when you ask them a simple question, what is your purpose in life? They say, I don't know. I have no idea what my life purpose is. What is your identity as a Muslim? They're going to say, if I'm going to be honest, it's extremely weak. I don't really feel like a Muslim. This is because when you go back to the parents were not able, because they themselves didn't have. They weren't able to transmit this to the next generation. You know, sometimes, this is something I think unique to scholars, that parents will suddenly bring their children and they'll say, Sayyid, Shaykh, my child, he has problems, fix him. And you look at them and you say, first of all, I don't know who you are. I've never seen you before in this community. Do you live here? They say, yes, I live here, but you know, Sayyid, we are busy. We're always at work. I haven't had time to bring anyone to the masjid. The second thing is, do you think that this child of yours is, I don't know if you've seen those wind-up toys that sometimes they get stuck and you have to hit it on the head and then suddenly it fixes itself. Is that what they think their child is? That after 20 years of zero education, zero Islamic awareness, zero identity as a religious, spiritual being, now they bring you in front of the scholar and they expect a dhikr, some sort of special dua that suddenly you recite and the child says, oh wow, I get it now, I see it now, and they begin to pray Salatul Layl. That's not how it works. That's not the way. This is the primary responsibility of the parents, my brothers and sisters. It is not the responsibility of the masjid. It is not the responsibility of the school system. It is the primary responsibility. And if the parents refuse to do this, believe me, no one else is going to do as good of a job as you can do. This was the first issue. The second issue, and this is so critical, because I've seen parents do number one, but if you don't do number two, you're probably going to lose your child. Number two, it relates to the fact that we live in one of the most sexualized societies in human history ever. Look at human history from the very beginning till now. Try to find one time period, one era, where the issues of sexuality are as easily promoted as they are today. Impossible. Impossible. You are never going to find any time period. And you know, in the past, you could escape to the home countries. I remember there was a very good brother in San Diego. He had 9 daughters, no sons. 9 daughters. At one point, he became worried. I don't know, he saw something. And he packed up his bags. He said, Yallah, we are going back to Pakistan. At that time you could escape. You saw some haram going on in the West. You said, I'm going to go back home. You could escape. Today, the haram, it is accessible in everyone's pockets. You could escape to the Amazon rainforest, and the haram will still be accessible to your children. This second issue, that is a responsibility of the parents. It is the issue of getting your children married as early and at least as early as possible, that is feasible for your family. I've seen parents that they educate their children, Sunday school, masjid, X, Y, and Z. But when it comes to the issue of marriage, what do? They say, my son is young right now, my daughter is young right now. Let them go do university, get their master's degree, get their PhD, get their medical degree. Then we are going to begin looking. What they don't realize is that in 98% of cases, that young man, that young woman, they're not going to wait. The pull of youth is going to pull them at least to a degree towards haram. Parents always think this, not my child. It's not going to be her, it's not going to be him. Your children are human beings. And the world has become such that if you do not open the doors of halal, the doors of haram are wide open for them to take. One of the side effects of this kind of culture that we have built is that we see that we have an epidemic amongst the young men where they are marrying outside of their faith. Every city is different, but this is what I've noticed throughout my years traveling around the US and other countries, that many of the youth, the young men, instead of marrying Muslim women, they are actually going outside and they are marrying Christian women, Jewish women. Why? Accessibility. The fathers of those young Muslim women, maybe they make it a little bit difficult, and these young men are out there, their parents are saying wait, they are building relationships at work, at school, and suddenly they come and they want to marry someone. And of course, that is when they approach us again for the primary reason that they see that their son wants to marry Becky from down the street, and the Hajj, he doesn't want Becky as a family member. He would rather keep her on that side of the street. By that time it's too late. This is an issue that cannot be fixed. So it's very important here that the parents, they pay attention to this, that early marriage, it is one of the keys and it is one of the responsibilities of the parents. And by the way, if the parents, they have this one objection, they say, but what 20-year-old, what 22-year-old is going to have money to get married? Did you think that all of that ihsan, that goodness that Allah orders for the parents, it comes without a price? One of the things that Islam teaches us is that between parents and children, there is a financial responsibility. Meaning what? Meaning that if the parents are ever in financial need, the father, the mother, they have a need for money, something's gone wrong. It is the children's duty, if they can, if they have the means, it is their religious duty, wajib, on them to help the parents. But the flip side is also true, that the parents, they have a financial responsibility, that if their child, that young man, that young woman is in their early 20s, they don't have money to get married, it's natural. It is the responsibility of the parents, if they have the capacity, it is their responsibility to fund that marriage. Sometimes we don't really think about it this way. We say, no, let them go and let them get a job and let them go through university. They'll do that. That is a responsibility that they have. But we also have a responsibility towards them as well. Now, one of the most beautiful things that we can leave behind in this world, I know that as people start to get older, they start to think about ways in which they can leave sadaqah jariyah, they can leave a everlasting charity on their behalf. Traditions, they mention to us that one of the greatest things that we can leave behind is a righteous child. A righteous child. I wanted to mention a tradition here, and it's such a beautiful tradition, and it comes during the time of Isa ibn Maryam, the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. Isa alayhi salam, it's been narrated from the Ahlul Bayt that one day he was walking past a graveyard, and he happens to walk past a grave, and of course the prophets of God, they had the ability to see the metaphysical world. They could see into the world of the barzakh. He looks and he sees that this man who is in the grave, he is being punished by the angels of chastisement. These angels are punishing him in horrible ways. And so Isa alayhi salam, he quickly passes by. He doesn't want to see what is happening. Later he is returning on that same way, that same path. And suddenly he looks and he sees that something's changed in the grave. What's going on? He sees that the angels of chastisement have left. Who has come? The angels of mercy have arrived. And he sees that there is a nur that is surrounding the grave. He's amazed. He asks Allah, he says, Ya Allah, what in the world is happening here? What changed? I was passing by this grave. The angels are punishing this man in a horrible way. Now I am coming back. The angels of mercy are here. They're comforting the man. They're taking care of the man. He's in a very good state. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the following to him. He says, "O Jesus, this person in the grave was a sinner. He had committed many sins in his life. He hadn't done tawbah. But he left a pregnant wife when he passed away." Allah continues, "She bore and raised his child until that child began to grow up. When the child began to grow up, the mother took him and she gave him to the care of the scribes." You know, this was during the time of Banu Israel. So the scribes were the teachers of religion. She gave him to the scribes to educate. Allah says that the scribes, they began to teach this child, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allah, He says, that when I saw this, I felt embarrassed to punish the father of this child in the bowels of the earth while his son is praising me and remembering me on the surface of the earth. Imagine, this man leaves behind a single child. He doesn't even raise the child, but because it is his child, and the mother takes him to get educated, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy on that man who is being punished. Now, my brothers and sisters, imagine the potential of righteous children, boys and girls. Imagine the effect that they can have on this world. Imagine the things that they can change, and every generation, as that lineage becomes more and more and more, you receive a share of that good deed that is attributed to them. There is really nothing more beautiful, nothing greater in this world than leaving behind righteous progeny. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us with such children. And may He allow us to show our parents the utmost level of ihsan, insha'Allah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tonight is the night of Ali Akbar, and I felt that it really ties in to the issue of parents and children. Because when we look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we know that he loved his children just like all parents love their children. But the Ahlul Bayt had an even deeper love for their children than we do. They had a love that really cannot be described. And so when we look at the events of Karbala, when we look at the relationship between Imam Hussein and Ali Akbar, it must have been one of the most difficult things in this world to see his son going towards that battlefield. This is a child that you have raised, that you love like no one else. And now you are surrounded by all of these enemy forces, and now he is asking you for permission. He is asking, "Oh Father, I want to go into this battlefield. I want to fight these enemies of Islam." And you are there and you are giving that son permission. You are saying, "Go, my son." One of the things that is mentioned is that in the midst of this battle, Ali Akbar, he became very thirsty. And the thirst and the wounds, all of that, it began to really build up for him. And he comes back to the Imam. And when he comes back to the Imam, he is telling his Imam, "Father, is there just a little bit of water? Is there just a little bit of drink that we can have?" It's mentioned that Imam Hussein, he shows him his own tongue. He says, "My son, I am even more parched. I am even more thirsty than you are." How difficult were those moments for Ali Akbar, and how difficult were those moments for Imam Hussein. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلى على محمد وآل محمد. ثانية على حب الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ثالثة لتعجيل الفرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Inshallah, a reminder before we begin the majlis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam is that tears are very precious, and inshallah we are able to use these tears to transform our actions to gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you can't shed any tears, they say to do istighfar inshallah before entering to the majlis to help soften the heart. Inshallah, if you still can't shed tears, at least putting your head down in sorrow, mourning Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam will give you the same reward inshallah as if you were crying. صلى على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, our beloved Holy Prophet, and the Ahl al-Bayt who was in your homes that Allah blessed us with guidance and revelation. And upon you descend the angels day in and day out. Everybody together, جميعا يا حبيبي يا حسين نور عيني يا حسين يا حبيبي يا حسين نور عيني يا حسين our beloved Hussein, light of our eyes, Hussein. Ya Rahmatullah al-Wasi'a, Hussein. O vast mercy of Allah, Hussein. Sallallahu alayka ya madloom. Sallallahu alayka ya ayyuha ash-shaheed fi Karbala. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, our beloved Imam al-Hussein, our beloved oppressed Imam, the Imam who was slaughtered by the shores of the Euphrates, while his mouth was dry of thirst. Tonight, brothers and sisters, is the night dedicated to Ali al-Akbar, the eldest of Hussein's children, the one Abu Abdullah described as the most similar to Rasulullah in appearance, in manners and in rationale. A blessed poet describes Imam al-Hussein when Ali al-Akbar is struck during the Battle of Karbala. I saw Hussein by his tent almost collapse, choking from his tears, seeping through his teeth's gaps, as if his heart exploded or soul perhaps. He cried, "Where are you, my son?" with his voice hoarse. Ali al-Akbar's blood flowed and blinded his horse. It ran to them and their swords with no remorse. Hussein rolled like a bird to its nest, rescued. The angel of death towards its prey flew. Akbar said no more, "Oh son, how I miss you." No father can bear the loss of his own son. When your head was struck, I felt crippled the son. When your soul left my son, I felt mine had gone. Abu Abdullah sacrificed everything in Karbala, every single thing he had: food, water, women and children, love for the world, and even his own soul. But what was his motto, brothers and sisters? Every single time that the tribulations became harder, he says, "Are you content, my Lord? Take until you are content." It is said that Abu Abdullah lost his companions one by one, and his response was none but the Quranic verses of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These stances of Hussein are recurrent throughout the tragedy of Karbala. The morning of Ashura, Ali al-Akbar was requested to recite the adhan during the prayer time. This was the final adhan he would recite. The last time his father Abu Abdullah al-Hussein would hear the call to prayer from his beloved voice. It was no ordinary adhan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ali al-Akbar was a young man, a role model for the youth in the struggle against the oppressors, taking the first initiative, having the will to sacrifice first, taking the will to go to his father. He came to Abu Abdullah to request permission to fight on the battlefield. فلما رآه الحسين رفع شيبة نحو السماء وقال اللهم اشهد على هؤلاء القوم فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومن
انتقام برسولك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. كنا إذا اشتقنا إلى وجه رسولك نظرنا إلى وجهه. اللهم فامنعهم بركات الأرض، وإن منعتهم ففرقهم تفريقا. When Abu Abdullah saw him, he raised his face towards the skies and he said, Ya Allah, bear witness to these people, for the young man who has emerged to them is the one who resembles your messenger Muhammad the most in character and in speech and in etiquette. When we long to see the face of your messenger, we would look at his face. Ya Allah, hold off your provisions from their land, and if you withhold your provisions, cut them apart and tear them apart, break them off into disagreeing groups. Ali al-Akbar knew that Imam al-Hussein was permitting him to go, so he bid his last farewells. Imagine Imam al-Hussein saying goodbye to the resemblance of Rasulullah. He began to hug him, he began to smell him. The women came out, his aunts clung on to him, his sisters hugged him. Imam al-Hussein's face changed at the sight of the scene. He took his hand and moved him away from them. He said, let him go, for he is dying in the name of Allah. Ali al-Akbar said goodbye to his father. He mounted his horse and took to the battlefield, shouting to the enemies, Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali, نحن وبيت الله أولى بالنبي، والله لا يحكم فينا ابن الدعي. أطعنكم بالرمح حتى ينثني، أضربكم بالسيف حتى يلتوي، ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي. I am Ali, son of Hussein, son of Ali, in the Prophet, God's house, and we have more adequacy. By Allah, the illegitimate one will not upon us rule. With the spear I strike until it's split in two. I strike with the sword until bend it might the strike of a young Alawi Hashimite. It is said he began to fight the groups with the utmost bravery and killed a large number of the enemy soldiers. He killed every man who approached him. Then Umar ibn Sa'd yelled out, will no one be brave enough to face the man? Bakr bin Ghanam, an enemy of the enemy soldiers, went closer to Ali al-Akbar. Abu Abdullah was standing at the entrance of the tent. Abu Abdullah's facial features began to change as he started to worry. Layla, Ali al-Akbar's mother, looked at the Imam and said, did anything happen to my son Mawla? He replied, no, Layla. However, pray for him, for the man who approached him is who we worry from. Pray for him, for my grandfather Rasulullah once said that a mother's prayer is always accepted. Layla went inside and prayed for her son as she said, Ya Allah, بغربتي أبي عبد الله, بعطشي أبي عبد الله. Ya Allah, by the estrangement of Abu Abdullah, for the sake of Abu Abdullah's thirst, you are the one who returned Yusuf to Yaqub. Return my son Ali back to me. It is said that Ali al-Akbar soon returned to Abu Abdullah after killing Bakr bin Ghanam. What did he tell his father in this moment? Ya abati, al-atash qad qatalani. العطش قد قتلني، وثقل الحديد قد أجهدني، فهل إلى شربة ماء من سبيل؟ Ali al-Akbar returned to his father Hussein after killing the enemy. He said to his father, "Father, thirst is killing me, and the heaviness of the steel is draining me. Is there a little bit of water that would strengthen me against our enemies?" فبكى الحسين وقال وغوثا يا بني من أين آتي بالماء. Imam al-Husayn's heart broke as he heard his son's word. He replied, "Ya bunay, O son, where will I bring you water from? Fight a little more, for it is not long until you join Rasulullah, and he will give you water that you will never feel thirsty after drinking again." It is said Ali al-Akbar returned to the battlefield, and he continued fighting them with a spear until one of the enemies came to him and said, "May the sin of every Arab be upon me if I don't break his father's heart over him." Ajarakumullah. As Ali al-Akbar was fighting a group of the enemies, it is said this cursed man hit him on the back of his head. Ali al-Akbar clung to the horse. It is said that the horse was covered in the blood of Ali al-Akbar. The horse began running into the enemy tents. After Ali al-Akbar's horse went into the enemy lines, the enemies attacked Ali al-Akbar from all over. They struck Akbar all over his body. فَقَطَّعُوهُ إِرَبًا إِرَبًا. Allahu Akbar. They killed Ali ibn al-Husayn. وعليا وعليا. It is said Abu Abdullah ran to his son. Imagine this scene, a father running to his dead son on the ground who's been struck and cut all over. It is said he went to Ali, placed his cheek on the cheek of Ali, saying, "My son Ali, قتل الله قوما قتلوك ما أجراهم على الرحمن." Abu Abdullah puts his cheek on his son's cheek and says, "Ya Ali, may Allah kill those who killed you. What audacity they have against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." It is said in another narration that Abu Abdullah lays next to his son on the floor and he hugs his son on the floor. Imagine what breaks the heart of this scene for Abu Abdullah. Imam al-Husayn then requested the youth of Bani Hashim to lift Ali back to the tents. They lifted him and held him back to the tent. The women, along with his mother Layla, gathered around Ali and started screaming, while Abu Abdullah stood there watching this mournful scene. May Allah help his mother's heart. She threw herself on the ground, held him to her chest, and cried as she smelled her son for the last time. Then Sayyidah Zainab came with her heart in pieces. Imagine what she was thinking at the sight of Ali al-Akbar. She fell to the body of Ali, and then she started yelling, "Ya Habiba, wabna akha, wa aliya ya." Abu Abdullah had to take Sayyidah Zainab back to the tent. It was such a terrible scene for them to experience on the day of Ashura. It's as if the scene turned into mourning between Zainab and Hussein over Ali. Imagine Hussein seeing his own son mutilated. What would he say to Zainab? Ali rah, ya Zainab qumi sannini Ali rah, Ali rah, تعالي وعونيني انشد الجراح. Ali's gone, Ya Zainab, rise and hold me. Ali's gone, Ali's gone. My heart was broken when I saw him. Ali's gone. Everybody together. Ali's gone. Ya Ya Zainab, rise and hold me. Ali's gone. Ali's gone. Ya Zainab, rise and hold me. Ali's gone. رحم الله من نادى وحسينا وعليا وشهيدا ومظلوما وشهيدا وحسينا وغريبا ومظلوما وحسينا. Everybody together send your salams to the Imam. يا حسينا يا حسينا سلام من قلوب أنت فيها يا حسينا لك الأرواح طرا نفتديها يا حسينا. Peace be upon you from all the hearts you are in. Ya Husayna, peace be upon you from all the hearts you are in. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا على بيت محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. To Allah we belong, and to Him is our return, and soon the aggressors will know what change their affairs will take, and the end times will be for the righteous. Ya Allah, in the name of Hussein, by the right of Hussein, by the thirst of Hussein, Ya Allah, we ask you to forgive our sins. We ask you to allow us to shed tears and make a change through the majalis of Aba Abdullah. We ask you to give us a good end on the path of truth. We ask you to fill our hearts with the love of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. We ask you to cure our sick ones and forgive our deceased, Ya Allah. We ask you to bring victory and relief to the oppressed all around the world, specifically those in Palestine, Ya Allah. We ask you to hasten the return of our master Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman and to make us amongst his loyal supporters, Ya Allah. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Inshallah, we'll be doing a latmiyah from our seats tonight. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ثانية على حب الزهراء صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد. ثالثة لتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد. عفوا, if you can give me one more salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm a servant to my Imam. I'm a servant to my Imam. I will stand against oppression, and Hussein is my obsession, and he is salvation, and he is salvation. I'm a servant to my Imam. I'm a servant to my Imam. I will stand against oppression, and Hussein is my obsession, and he is salvation, and he is salvation. I am Qasim and my uncle has no supporters. I am Qasim and my uncle has no supporters. I will go and grab my sword and then defend him, and fight till my last breath against the enemies. How dare they show disrespect, and how dare they attack this town? How dare they show disrespect, and how dare they attack this tent? Do they not know who's there? Do they not know who's there? For my uncle I took this pain. For my uncle then I was slain. For my uncle I took this pain. For my uncle then I was slain. I died Husseini. I died Husseini. I'm a servant to my Imam. I'm a servant to my Imam. I will stand against oppression, and Hussein is my obsession, and he is salvation, and he is salvation. I am Abbas, I'm the one who brings children water. I am Abbas, I'm the one who brings children water. Don't challenge me, I'm the son of Ali al-Karra. I will go right towards you and tear you apart. Your arrow in my eye went through, and your arrow in my chest went too, and I gave both my arms for the son of Zahra. I'm a servant to my Imam. I'm a servant to my Imam. I will stand against oppression, and Hussein is my obsession, and he is salvation, and he is salvation. I am Abis and I will fight you with my bare hands. I am Abis and I will fight you with my bare hands. I will fight until I fall upon these sands. Why is it when I charge you, I'll go run away? Don't fear me, fear your Lord soon on Judgment Day. What is wrong with you, Ya Abis? Why have you come to fight like this? This is love for Hussein. It drove me insane. I'm a servant to my Imam. I'm a servant to my Imam. I will stand against oppression, and Hussein is my obsession, and he is salvation, and he is salvation. I am Zainab and I speak in my language patience. I am Zainab and I speak in my language patience. If you see what I saw, you could not bear it. And if that was not enough, how much was I hit? After all that, Yazid looked at me and said, what did you think of this tragedy? After all that, Yazid looked at me and said, what did you think of this tragedy? I said, I only saw beauty. I only saw beauty. I'm a servant to my Imam. I'm a servant to my Imam. I will stand against oppression, and Hussein is my obsession, and he is salvation, and he is salvation. I am Hussein, I'm the grandson of your holy prophet. I am Hussein, I'm the grandson of your holy prophet. You all stand there against me, but what was my sin? To my grandpa I will complain how you attacked me on this plane, and how Shimmer sat on my chest, and how Shimmer sat on my chest, and you all know the rest, and you all know the rest. I'm a servant to my Imam. I'm a servant to my Imam. I will stand against oppression, and Hussein is my obsession, and he is salvation, and he is salvation. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة، فلعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلمسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الردي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبي بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت لقتالك. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، قصدت حرمك وأتيت إلى مشهدك، أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لدي أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أبي الفضل العباس وعلى الحوراء زينب ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
عظم الله أجوركم إن شاء الله. Please keep us in your du'as and see you tomorrow night for the night of Qasim. صلى الله على محمد وآله محمد.